Hey everybody, welcome to Theory Underground. I'm your host, David McCarricker, and today we are joined by Michał, aka Michael in Poland, aka Salomon da Costa, aka a channel on YouTube that I cannot pronounce, aka a social science researcher and the best guide I've ever had in my time abroad, getting shown around anywhere, really. Those who are going, wait a minute, where have I seen this face before? I recognize this man. Well, it's because, probably because all of those Zizek 101 videos had a very special advertisement at the end of it for the countrywide tour that is coming up this fall, and Michał's face was shown. His whole body. He's kind of walking and guiding us around Katowice, Poland. And so that might be where you recognize him from, if not from some obscure videos on YouTube. So welcome, Michael. How you doing?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. That's well, to be honest, that's honor actually. Uh, I appreciate a lot your work on the channel, and I wouldn't even call that channel right now. You're doing like a full-blown network of courses and things like that, which is giving me some FOMO syndrome, as you have already mentioned in one of your recent streams. Yes, I'm doing some YouTube business myself. For those of you, you know, in the know in the Polish speaking sphere, it's called pojęcia przy pracy, which means concepts at work. With the difference that in Polish it alliterates nicely. It's my approach is straight on dialectical to combine like practice of research and everyday politics with theory and philosophy. So, pretty similar as you guys are doing here.
Fantastic. And so, um, for everyone, yeah, Michael and I, we've been having conversations for a couple of years at least, and he's been around before that as a longtime friend of the channel. Just at least in the comment sections and stuff like that, always joining at the most obscure hours because he's got a really crazy graduate and teaching schedule that keeps him up late. So it's like he's one of the few Central European time friends who can actually catch things live, because most of the time that's like 2 in the morning or something. And well, we talk about a lot of things, and one of the conversations that we've had over the years that has been kind of developing more recently has kind of come out of the conspiracy theory discourse. Actually, I shouldn't say the conspiracy theory discourse. It's instead the academic theoretical discourse on conspiracy theories as the subject matter itself, the phenomenon of conspiracy theories. And I think that we both get something from this because our friends are mostly progressive or leftist. I mean, at least I have some regular conservative type friends or whatever, or mostly family members. And I wouldn't say that they're big time conspiracy theorists or anything like that. But I mean, that's kind of besides the point. The point is that our friends, our colleagues, our peers, insofar as they talk about conspiracy theories, tend to talk about it with these talking points, I guess, that are very popular today in the mainstream media. And I find it very frustrating, kind of some of the presuppositions that go into that whole discourse. You have a little bit more of an academic basis for your interest in this conversation because you've been to conferences on the topic and you've kind of seen what people are saying at those levels. Also, by the way, everybody, I'm sorry that my camera is like lagging out here. I don't know if Michael, can you see it? I know that they can probably see it on the live side. Are you seeing it?
On the
Like
Zoom side, it looks pretty neat. I don't know,
okay.
maybe it's something, with YouTube.
Like I move my arm, and then it's like a second later my arm moves, and I think it's because my computer is not up to. Oh shit. Let me do something different. But okay, maybe you could say a little bit, Michael, about your experiences in academic conferences on this topic and how that got you thinking along these
I
lines.
mean, I'll just start, not to like deconstruct myself, but just to give you some quick background. To be honest, I got into the research of conspiracy theories like almost by accident. I've just started my PhD studies. My first year in a PhD school in the University of Silesia in Katowice. It was like, well, 1.5 years ago. And I was looking just for a research team to hang out with, to gain some experience, to cooperate in the field of communication and media studies, which is my field of, I'm trying to write my PhD thesis in. And so I've got this invitation to a multi-component and multinational team that is researching, and here I'm quoting the literal name of it, the political potential of conspiracy theories in Poland and in Slovenia. So we have a like double team. On our Polish side, we have like three sub themes, let's say three components, and I'm in the one that is devoted to communication. And so we started with like 1 year ago with some quantitative, like more statistical analysis of conspiracy theory discourse on Polish Twitter. So you have to keep that in mind, that my perspective is a bit limited. First of all, to Polish CT discourse. Let's use as usual the acronym, because to repeat conspiracy theories all the time is just exhausting. So we're researching cities in Poland in Polish, and they have some specific like folklore, some ethnological twist to them, and that's a hypothesis that more and more cultural studies scholars are putting forward when it comes to conspiracy theories. And the second thing is that we're focusing on Twitter, because Twitter is these are short messages. You don't have to care about how do you call that, all that interpunction signs, commas and sentences and all that. You can just jam it all into an algorithm and do some word embedding, do some statistics with text. And we actually managed to work out an algorithm that has like 90% efficiency in identifying conspiracy theories discourse on Twitter.
Really?
Yeah, we just like, if you want to hear about the methodology, we started with some arbitrary choices and then snowballing. We're putting in some keywords. The keyword is like the basic unit for us, basic unit of exchange here, which we thought that are going to connect us with conspiracy theories discourse. And the algorithm, it started to work, and it split out some more keywords that it thinks characterizes text with conspiracy theories. And then it just gives us some, we have like a database of like few million tweets. So it gives us from time to time samples, like 15 tweets per each keyword. And we then decide using, some plain good old-fashioned Excel spreadsheets, we're just coding which of these we find to be matching our criteria of conspiracy theories, which is another topic of discussion, how to define CT, how to identify them, and so on. But cutting
That
a long story short, yeah, we found like several distinguished narratives. And I must say that they might be not so relatable to, the English speaking world, because especially, the our neighboring situation with Ukraine, with Russia. There's a lot of historical background. There's also this important moment of April 10th, 2010, when the presidential plane crashed in Smolensk in Russia, and our president, along with his wife and some, important, priest generals, stuff like that, they just died on the spot. It was a great tragedy, great catastrophe, and to use, some more Lacanian terms, it was such a traumatic, like a rip in the structure of the symbolic order in Poland, that it suddenly and constantly started to be filled in with conspiracy theories. And the thing is that those conspiracy theories are being even, pushed forward by some politicians, in the highest ranks of Polish government. And we're trying also to pin down those politicians using Twitter, because most of Polish MPs have their official accounts. And we found that three of them, at least like for the beginning of 2023, they were like pretty regulars of the city bubble or echo chamber of Twitter. So our general hypothesis about conspiracy theories having a political potential is confirmed just a bit, but that bit is pretty controversial and well, it's a big surprise, and it's some murky waters of ideology, and it's disturbing when we talk about this in scientific conferences, mostly to political science scholars, and they'll
it's
go like this. They cannot believe that the CT discourse penetrated so deep into Polish politics.
you're
So
saying
that's.
the CT discourse penetrated so much into politics. Yeah, I thought a couple of times you were saying the word city, but no, you're saying
No, no, no.
CT. So there's a slip. I almost said critical theory. So the conspiracy theory discourse has penetrated into politics, and this is disturbing for a lot of the social scientists that you're working with. Um,
Yes,
what are the
because yeah, I mean, that's doesn't, first of all, this normal thing, well, we're all aware that, to some extent, that there are conspiracy theories going all around, and more anecdotally speaking, everyone can find out, an example of an acquaintance or family member that's into it. But when you think, like seriously, you take into account some statistics that we have, some hard empirical data. We haven't even started some actual qualitative insight into, doing some ethnography and shit like that, interviews. Like, it's just now we have a statistical basis to see that there is a problem. But what's the quality of the problem? We'll have to, dive into it in few forthcoming months. But yeah, they're surprised sometimes, and I have to be a bit salty about that, because political science in general in Europe is mostly based upon liberal, how should I say it, like assumptions, of how the political field looks like. And they have this ideal of civil society, um, it's a very idealistic approach, and everything they do is actually doing some, statistics, some mostly quantitative research into public opinion about political parties, and that's what the political field is limited to. I mean, it's a great aim for the critique that was proposed by Chantal Mouffe. Like, she distinguished between politics, like certain concrete way of organizing a party, a state, whatever. And on the other hand, you have the political. So the whole field of possible, it's like almost the real of the politics, all the antagonisms that are going on. And they do not really acknowledge that. I know that we have some sophisticated philosophical theory to talk about it, Lacan, Zizek, all those post-Marxists like Chantal Mouffe, for example. But still, it's pretty, from my perspective, that's pretty, scary. Like, they're not mentally prepared to spearhead this phenomenon of conspiracy theories. I'm personally researching in my PhD anarchist media in Poland and in France, and that's also the problem. They have no place in the classical political theory, that's been done in academia in Europe, and I guess in States too. So yeah, that's the background. That's the wide perspective that I have to deal with.
So yeah, this, I think that there's this mixture between the two directions to take the conversation. One is the kind of intent of this kind of research, and the kind of assumptions in the field, as opposed to our concerns, which may overlap and will definitely probably have different points of emphasis, related to how this phenomenon is being perceived, interpreted, etc. And so I kind of want to, before we get too much into the research methods, I really do want to dive into this, like, how is it being defined? Before getting that, I want to point out the comment from Songs 4K in the chat that said, the political power of conspiracy theories sounds like a CVE project countering violent extremism, right? A countering violent extremism project on the lookout for wrongthink, right? Like, this sounds to me like a bunch of progressives in academia going, oh, it's kind of like the thumbnail of this whole stream, which is a bunch of people sitting around a table being like, the people don't believe us. Oh no, what are we going to do about it? Is that fair? Or do you think that there's, what do you think the value or potential problems of this kind of research is?
Yeah, you're right that we have to separate few levels, at least two levels of discussion here, because we have the phenomenon itself, or at least how it's mediated through our theory. I have to, as a dialectician, I have to make such a disclaimer, of course. But on the other hand, you have the theoretical discourse itself, and it's also problematic. I don't want to, go on and nagging and in specifically Polish way to counterpart for social theory or critical theory even, because I hope that we'll get to that in a few minutes. But there are some parallels, there are some common points for critical theory, even if we understand it in the literal way, like, Horkheimer or Adorno did. And conspiracy theories, not just the fact that they create the same, they both can be abbreviated to CT, and that's some, funny, that's some funny point on the side of language, and to put it in Lacanian terms, la langue. But yeah, that's the thing. So I don't know, maybe we should start with how to define conspiracy theories, and then some problems will arise, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, and so it seems like the before we define, let's just characterize. So typically people think of the assassination of JFK, the moon landing,
Mm-hmm.
Pearl Harbor. That's the main big three from previous to the 2000s. And then in the 2000s, obviously kicking it off, you get 9/11. And yeah, that's the biggest one. That's the most interesting one. And then there's a variety of other ones. People will
Mm-hmm.
equate these. People will equate these to, being on the same level of Holocaust denial, right? Or climate change denial, which has resulted in a situation where it's it's almost it's if you're skeptical at all of narratives of the mainstream media, then 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 there will be people who are like, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, or they will kind of start assuming along those lines. And so before we define it, it just seems like it's gotten to the point where if you don't trust, then you're one of them, and they'll think that you're just a QAnon person or something like that. And for me, that's highly problematic because distrust is the beginning of all thinking, you know, especially class consciousness, right? And I know that you're coming from the kind of the same position as well. This is the seed that can be cultivated into a kind of class consciousness, with concepts, but instead what we have are these sort of grand narratives. And so,
Yeah, it's a corrupted seed, like.
corrupted seeds.
Also, I hope that we'll get to that even further in the talk. But I'm trying on my part of the more theoretical research into conspiracy theories. I'm trying to put it into the frame within the framework of political or critique of political economy, because that's my like the Marxist perspective, especially the autonomist, post-operaist, or the theory of trans-individualism as it's proposed by Jason Reed. That's my framework, theoretical framework that I use both for anarchist media, for researching, like, I don't know, fantasy fandom and gamers and whatever else there is that creates like alternative institutions that produce information and subjectivities from the common, that is communication, language, and so on. And in the theory of the common, as it was introduced by Michael Hart and Antonio Negri, we even have this term corrupted common. So you create like a bottom-up movement. You're trying to, within a communist logic to produce something directly from the resources, but what you end up is a harmful clique, not a commune or something like this. And that's the approach I'm trying to take.
The approach is something I think we should circle back on because I know that you just said a lot of words nobody has probably ever heard. And the last time, if they were just listening to this channel, the last time they would have heard some of those words was when Chris Catrone kind of wrote them off.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm thinking about the same moment. Yeah.
we'll come back to that though. So, define conspiracy theory. This must be. Is it a difficult problem for social researchers who have a lot of data to parse to define what characterizes a tweet as conspiratorial as opposed to based in reason and evidence or whatever?
So there are different approaches. And when we started to write our paper about, those quantitative methods of identifying conspiracy theories, we just stumbled upon this great variety of definitions and this lack of consequence. Like, people can write a whole meta-analysis of hundreds of papers about conspiracy theories in media and sociology, whatever. and without even defining them. They're just like, we're talking about these things like, I don't know, JFK, 9/11, stuff like that. And, they think it's intuitive, so it's that's enough, it passes. But for us, it's not enough. And during our literature review for the paper, I actually proposed that we could distinguish, or in other words, we could actually put those definitions on a spectrum. And on one hand, we have the definitions that are strictly content-oriented, and on the other hand, we have structure-oriented definitions. And content-oriented definitions are the classical ones, usually. Like, for example, Popper, who actually was probably the first, social scientist, social science scholar who came up with this concept that there are some that there are some discourses. Well, he wouldn't use that term, but there are some discourses that explain complex social phenomena by referring to conspiracy and some, clandestine groups that are trying to harness as much power as they can. Also, well, just to put it short, these are all the definitions that are just collecting precise and concrete narratives. So you already see the problem. You would have to update such a definition like every, I don't know, half a year, few months, because conspiracy theories are evolving, not only in their content, but also a bit in their form. And on the other hand, you have structural definitions that do not really care, like, especially about the precise concrete content, but they're trying to approach conspiracy theories as a way of thinking, as a symbolical structure, as some kind of a cognitive tool, or as Fredric Jameson would say, cognitive mapping.
Right.
You could also extrapolate that even to in some early immigration works of Adorno, where he was analyzing the how do you call that? That whole bird science stuff, astrology and so on. He was analyzing those columns in Los Angeles Tribune, and he wrote a pretty lengthy article. And as far as I've researched, he wrote that originally in English. It's called Stars Down to Earth. And if you extrapolate some contemporary understandings of CT onto his theories, we could actually say that, back in 40s, he was theorizing about conspiratory thinking. But you see,
Jameson.
No, Adorno.
Oh, Adorno. Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you're saying that it was Adorno who was doing the analyzing astrology and wrote the Stars Down to Earth piece. Okay.
That's the point. And because he's so, abstract in a positive sense and theoretical about that, you can extrapolate to different kind of narratives, even contemporary, which are like 60, 70 years apart from the original, date of publication of his theory. But because they're focusing on the structure, this, the social function that conspiracy thinking fulfills, or it precisely focuses on conspiracy theories as a result of thinking, and then they're trying to define this thinking instead of defining those narratives, then, in my opinion, we have something more useful, more universal, more more easy to operationalize in research. So that's the thing. And for example, in our research, we aren't even defining conspiracy theories, we're defining conspiracy thinking. We have 7 or 8 criterions, and among them there are for example, that they use self-sealing arguments. So for example, if you're talking to flat earthers and you want to give them an evidence like a photo took by NASA or something, they will always reply that it's been, forged, and that you're pushing the official agenda or propaganda. So they're always finding a counter argument on this very, well, pretty sophisticated when it comes to epistemologics, when it comes to epistemology, pretty sophisticated argument, which will debunk all of your, epistemic takes on their own narrative. That's one thing. And we have, many different ones that we either gathered from reading, all the research, the state of art, or from our personal experience with reading all those, thousands of conspiratorial tweets, which, to put a side note, it really messes up with your brain after some, longer exposure. I had literal nightmares, like after one session of coding, like 2,500 tweets, because they were like right after the beginning of the war in Ukraine. So, on the one hand, you're doing you're trying to help those people, they're your new neighbors. You're trying, you're using your shitty Russian skills to translate something for them. And then, the rest of the day you're reading tweets about how people would like to torture or purge them or something because they have some conspiratory explanation for that. Some real
So
shit.
yeah, there's really terrifying stuff in it, like especially with the Q stuff. Because when I meet a QAnon guy, and they're usually guys, though I have met one woman who is kind of pretty close to that milieu. Um, the they usually are a mixture of they're I think it's like three things. They see the light, and they're kind of excited about how they get it and nobody else does. Um, they are kind of horrified by what they think is going on, and they're wait, what was the other one? Shit, I had three things here. But basically, they're they're usually like, oh, they're kind of like, oh, they're in on the secret, and they're freaked out, but also usually like in a sort of like there's like this sort of self-righteous spin on it, because they're part of the people who are going to be involved in fixing the problem. And so for anyone who doesn't know, everyone should know at this point, when you think of QAnon, you probably think of, oh, well, the ruling elite is all a bunch of a bunch of pedophiles who drink the blood of infants. And they believe that there's this thing called I don't even know how to say the word properly. Adrena something. It's like it's in the blood, and that it's a lot more potent in the blood of infants. And if the baby has that blood taken out of it while that baby's like terrified, then that chemical component has like a drug effect, like a psychoactive drug effect, and supposedly it can like extend your lifespan. It can also give you like this sort of rapturous experience. And so, but for me, I'm just like, well, it's not news. It's not news that they're a bunch of shape-shifting, blood-sucking lizards. I just mean that metaphorically. They just think they believe it literally, And so it's kind of crazy because they just think, oh, well, they're all in on this cabal. And have you
Yeah,
seen
it's
that?
it's like taking, all those so-called Gothic Marxism metaphors, that we can find in Capital, for example,
I can't even.
literally.
Yeah, it is. It is. Have you seen the interview that Channel 5 News? I don't know if you remember that guy, Andrew Callahan. Channel 5 News did an interview with the QAnon shaman guy from the
I
Capitol
haven't
raid.
seen it, the whole thing, only, some parts that some people, posted on Twitter or something.
Ah, well, that's kind of indicative of those conversations. It's pretty normal. Um, that's pretty normal. I think I've kind of had that conversation with three different people in different settings in different places. I never really saw it coming. One of them was a PhD having professor who was overseeing some of my own research. And when I found out that he was just super in the Q verse, I was like, what the fuck? And
No,
then,
but that's actually like, sorry to interrupt, but
yeah.
there are actually, at least in Central Europe, when I've heard on like few days ago on a international conference that we had in Poland, there was a panel about conspiracy theories, and one of the researchers had some, some solid data, statistical data about the demographics of conspiracy theories followers. And you can, like, statistically, you could find some professors, some, serious scholars who believe in at least one or two conspiracies going on.
Yeah, there's a few, and another time it was like a sort of almost I thought he was going to be a street preacher. He was standing there on campus handing out literature, and I was like, "Oh God, it's one of these guys." But then he was just talking about some Q shit. I don't think he was handing out. I don't know what he was. It seemed like he was trying to engage with people, but I don't think he was like pushing actual propaganda in paper form, at least. But that was the impression I got as I approached him. And then I think, yeah, I forget how our engagement went exactly, but he he was really interested in the club that I was a part of and the stuff that we were doing. And then I realized the only reason he was really interested was because he was trying to get me interested in Q stuff. So it
Mm-hmm.
was kind of like that, and then other places, just working jobs, I've met people who are really into that stuff. But I guess for me, it's like, so if Descartes starts really like laying the basis for philosophy, questioning his own existence, questioning what he can know is true, et cetera, questioning, starting and asking, well, couldn't they be correct? Couldn't it be true that the ruling class is indeed a bunch of, potentially anything? Shapeshifters, people who've been alive for thousands of years, basically vampires, who knows? Like, that actually seems like a good place to begin thinking, perhaps, because especially since, from the individual standpoint, it seems like a productive kind of line of questioning, but also from the sociological standpoint, or from the sort of class analysis standpoint, I would think the most productive line of questioning might be something like, why is it that that's such a good question, or was such a provocative question for some people? Why does that really get people feeling like they've woken up for the first time? If not for the fact that we live in a society where it's hard to debunk something like this because we never come into contact with these kinds of people. Their orders of removal between ourselves and the leadership is so wide that we can entertain any kind of theory about them because anything's plausible. Like in a smaller village, you could spy on your chief, or you might hear rumors and then those can be confirmed over time. But that chief, you see that chief, you see your elders, you see them on a regular basis. And then in a
Yeah,
smaller
but
city state, the same thing could be true in a smaller city state. But in a giant nation, it's
yeah, Dave, but
completely
you're
removed.
you're actually repeating here a bit the conduct of thought that Jameson expressed in his writings on conspiracy theories. That like he had this book in 1992, the geopolitical aesthetics, where he analyzes some 80s conspiratory themed movies. It's pretty nice. And he kind of reads that as a he kind of reads that as a symptom, like an epistemic symptom of society, and especially the poor, the working class, being lost in the postmodern and late capitalist society. And he starts with this metaphor of space and cities. Like, you can imagine that in every city there are certain districts of buildings that you cannot enter because of your low status, because it's guarded by not only like private security forces but also police and the system and everything. You have CCTV everywhere and so on. But what Jameson says is even that kind of conceptualizing space isn't enough. The way that capitalism rolls on everyday basis is so virtual, it's so technological. You could get into all those metaphors that Baudrillard loved to put forward. And so for him, like, conspiracy theories are basically, it's like, to quote Jameson, it's cognitive mapping of the late capitalism and cognitive mapping done by the poor. So on the one hand, you have this unprivileged epistemic status, because we know, like, I mean Marxist materialists, that the point of view, all your toolbox that you have to analyze and interpret reality is usually limited by your material conditions, education, and so on. And on the other hand, there's also this general, like, zeitgeist problem with perceiving the society as totality. That's basically some classic Frankfurt School problem, especially in Adorno. That, for example, that was one of the main points in his dispute with neo-positivists, led by Popper, of course, in Germany. That the positivist or neo-positivist sociology cannot come up with any holistic perspective on society, because it's not empirically justified to construct anything bigger than some micro or mezzo level of social interactions. But without that, we cannot do a proper dialectical analysis, because we do not have the medium, the supposed absolute or the wider context. It always works in both ways. Like Adorno, for example, I'll just talk a lot about Adorno today and as every day, everywhere, because he's my main guy, let's say. He has his own micrological takes, like in Minima Moralia, for example. He goes to cinema, he blames himself for smiling to people and watching some shitty pop culture movies, and that's like a unique experience. But on the other hand, you have those abstract elaborate concepts about society, which stage of capitalism are we in, and then so on, the rate of profit to fall, shit like that. And you have to clash it together, to do some decent dialectics. And that is something that most of social science, in my humble opinion today, cannot do.
Right.
That is something that conspiracy theories are trying to do. In my and Jameson's opinion, they are trying to perceive society as a whole, usually as a whole being grasped by, reptilians, Masons, Jews, whatever. That is something that we work with in critical theory, especially in the dialectical tradition. So here we have a nice, placement of those different approaches. So yeah, the first, actually I have some points that I put down here to stress, like Alenka Zupancic in her last short essay about conspiracy theories, which for me is like, for all of you theory underground guys in here, a 101. Lacanian and dialectical materialistic approach to conspiracy theories. She starts like first we have to drop the perspective of conspiracy theories being purely a derogatory term. That leads, okay, we all know, progressives are mostly living like in disdain towards conspiracy theories, but you have to drop that. It leads you nowhere, like epistemologically. That's one thing. The second thing is that, and that's something that actually Georg Lukács came up with in his last book on ontology of social being, that when you're criticizing and analyzing ideologies, you do not treat them within the framework of truthfulness or lack of thereof. You have to drop this approach. We do not care whether conspiracy theorists are right or not. We care about how they came to be this way, and how do they use their theories in arguments and in politics and so on. So yeah, we have to get a little bit more sophisticated. From my specific Marxist perspective, I would say that we also should care more about how conspiracy theories as kind of knowledge are produced, in what conditions. Why aren't CT followers using like science or philosophy or I don't know, Marx, Adorno, Althusser, whatever, Zizek even, it's more like pop culture friendly, let's say. Why aren't they trusting neither academia, science, nor philosophy? That's also, we have to ask these Kantian questions about conditions of possibility of becoming a tinfoil head, to put it
Is
in
this
this way.
what Zupancic is saying, or is this what Lukács is saying, or is this what you're doing, synthesizing the two of them?
I'm just mixing it all up
Okay,
together right
cool.
now.
Hell yeah. All right. So and it's good because Luis Luis in the chat, aka Matan, who was a part of the 2-day marathon in the Q&A sections. He's also in the For They Know Not What They Do course. He's a big fan of Zupancic. And so, and he was, before you had actually brought it up in this conversation, in the live chat here, while on the job at work doing deliveries, being like, Zupancic is really good for this, and talking about her essay and Dissatisfied Philosophy and Sid Nanda and some of the other regulars in the chat were asking questions about that. And so Matan said he'll hopefully be able to, after deliveries, during the Q&A section of this conversation, jump on through the Zoom side and actually, engage a little bit. So
that'd be great, because like Zupancic actually does two things. She explores her own, specifically Lacanian approach to get into the theoretical discourse about conspiracy theories. But what she also does, and what I appreciate, is this archive work. This Derrida had a term for it, the archive fever or something like that. Going back to the roots and searching, doing literature review. Actually, she actually reminds us of those theories about conspiracy theories given by Jameson, given by Jodie Dean, who's also great in her book. Well, it's pretty dated right now because it mostly refers to X-Files. But she wrote this book, Aliens in USA, and it's also great. And she dunks on all those contradictions and limitations of official academical science, and why people do not trust it. She also quotes Bruno Latour, late Bruno Latour, who was first to ask this question: what's really the difference between yet another critical theory, some knowledge/power discourse ideology, and 5G reptilians and shit like that. These are altogether pretty abstract and suspicious towards like society at the same time. Yeah, I'm talking too much of it right
Well,
now, but
this piece that you
yes, this is a
this
very lengthy topic and
yeah.
branching one.
Well, and this conversation we're having here was supposed to be one of those marathon events but it didn't work out because of your Wi-Fi and your power grid really going out for hours at the time that you were going to join, which turned out to be pretty cool because it was an opportunity for J.M. Adams to jump in, and that was a really special conversation, kind of a meeting of two different worlds, kind of, and so. I think it's probably all for the best. You get your own dedicated live stream this way. But we'll still kind of do the same format where the first hour is followed by the Q&A section. And the main purpose is not to wring out from this every single thing we can say, but so much as to open a portal into a whole discursive field that other people are going to be able to kind of get a basis in. And so this whole course site live stream event that was 30 hours long, that's being continued right here basically, has been sort of the like 50 different opening salvos to different portals that go in different directions and then will intersect and overlap. And a lot of courses to come in the next couple of years are going to incorporate various aspects of these conversations, various individuals who are making appearances here. Like I, for instance, hope to be able to bring you back on when we are doing the digital literacy and critical media theory course, since media is one of your specialties. And maybe you'll be able to do like a guest lecture in the same way that Andrew McLuhan is coming on this Sunday to do a special lecture as a pre-course lecture to the digital literacy and critical media theory course. And people who are early enrollees to that course are going to be able to meet the grandson of Marshall McLuhan himself. But he's not just the grandson of Marshall McLuhan, son of Eric McLuhan, who also has done important media work. But he is writing his own work. He's currently serially releasing a book on his Substack. All of that was just to say there's we're not gonna exhaustively get into any of this stuff, but I do want to, what you just brought up, hone in on this piece by Bruno Latour, because I'm guessing that a lot of people haven't heard of it, and it's one that I think I just went down a Latour rabbit hole at one point because I had a professor who was at like a graduate level doing some Latour-based like actor network theory and trying to apply that to texts. Basically, that got me thinking, oh, there's something interesting about this guy. And so I started looking into it. I'll just put it this way. I have mixed feelings. I have mixed feelings about him. And I'm definitely curious to hear what your thoughts on Latour are. I guess I'll just preface that by saying, for everybody else, Bruno Latour is a French sociologist and anthropologist who does technology and media studies as well. He is, he was kind of like a fellow traveler of like Derrida and other people like that. At the time, he was kind of considered one of these postmodern skeptics of science, who then had a change of heart over time and became very critical of theory and of critical theory and of all of the sociological tendencies to use these abstract forces and dynamics and big concepts to explain complicated social phenomenon, kind of in the way that you're talking about Popper. And so he wrote this piece called "Has Theory Run Out of Steam?"
That's exactly the paper, the piece that I'm quoting,
Perfect.
and Zupančič is quoting. Yeah.
Perfect. Do you want to kind of explain? Do you want to kind of like give everybody a quick rundown on what? I think we could probably spend 5 minutes on this easily. I mean, we could talk about it for 2 hours, but let's at least try to say what was going on there.
But also to put it, to make it clear, I'm not really big into Latour. Like I never really had any interest in doing that, but still I've read his book. I don't really remember the title well. It was something with Pandora's box on its title, where it was basically his take on the theory of truth and how do we in the mediatized world, and how do we get from like a biologist's direct experience of seeing some microbes under the microscope. How does it how does it how does it travel through all that mediatized network of society, and how does it reach us to convince us, for example, I don't know, to wear masks during COVID or to wash our hands or something. So it's pretty interesting. That's one I could actually recommend. But what what I'm doing here with Latour is just entertaining his question, which by itself, as an argument has some it's some food for thought. He was basically the first philosopher, the first scientist to compare conspiracy theories to critical theory. But now we see that there are more common points, like what functions, what affordances they both have for people in those specific, precarious times.
The thing that stuck out to me in that piece, and sort of context everybody, Bruno Latour is the most cited sociologist of the 21st century. Like, beyond Marx, beyond Weber, beyond Bourdieu or Foucault, Bruno Latour is the most cited. Now, does he deserve to be the most cited, or do people just like to cite his "were we ever modern" in a way of just dismissing the modernity, postmodernity thing? I think probably it's just some bullshit like that. But with that said, though, he definitely has this reach. And so I think this was in like 2005 or some shit. He does this, has theory run out of steam, talk. It is a talk. You can read it as an essay. You can find the PDF for free on Google. It's not behind some academic paywall, but it's a talk that he gave. And in that talk, he basically, I'm going to be a little less than charitable. He basically says, oh, we've all been so critical for so long, but maybe it's time for us to stop being so critical, because at this point, my car mechanic seems to be more critical than I am. He's straight. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but this is what he says. He says that, he says maybe we need to be, he's basically saying that what we need to do is defend science. And that at this point nobody believes in climate change, and so that's a serious problem. And well, there might be something to that. What I found this kind of idea, oh, my car mechanic is more critical than I am. At the time that Nietzsche was talking about challenging everything, that was an edgy idea. But now everybody's edgy in this way. And so is it really edgy anymore? Can't we kind of move on
but
beyond that?
Dave, we have to distinguish, and I hope that's obvious, that there are totally different reasons for people criticizing, for example, I don't know, climate change theory or virusology, whatever. When critical theory does that, we're talking about epistemology, about some systematic critique of, and again, to quote Kant, the conditions of possibility of knowledge. We are deconstructing it, even in the literal, Derridian way. While on the other hand, you have conspiracy theories followers who are skeptic out of what? Out of distrust towards those institutions, and also, and here another portal opens to Alenka Zupancic, exposure of Lacanian theory, know that there is some jouissance behind conspiracy theories. To put it short, because you're producing new narratives and explanations for how things work, but they're not to be debunked and they're not to be verified neither. So you're just like constantly producing this discourse. You're constantly, pushing you constantly like fulfilling your jouissance actually. Maybe doing philosophy and critical theory is also, a kind of that, an example of that.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
but
think so.
but it is done for like the direct reasons for skepticism are totally different in those two.
In the you mean in the case of Nietzsche versus the car mechanic?
Yeah, for example.
For sure, for sure. I guess what I was getting to is I don't like this hipster subtext to everything Latour was doing, which is just like, oh, this was in, but now that the car mechanic gets it, maybe we should move on. Instead of asking bigger questions about, he never touches on class. He never touches on the epistemic gap between those who are supposed to know and those who are supposed to follow in a disciplined manner. And for me, he never gets to discursive Taylorism, which is my coinage for what's really going on behind the PMC phenomenon, which is that there are discursive lanes, and then experts set up over these different lanes, supposed specialists. They are meant to get their communities gatekeep these kinds of knowledge and tell us what to believe about them, instead of making it accessible that we could all learn and develop ourselves together, which would be the more, Kantian Enlightenment ideal. It's instead, no, stay in your lane. If you didn't get a PhD, you shouldn't even be talking about it. You just mind your business, car mechanic guy. And I'm like, car mechanic guy has audiobooks now. Car mechanic guy has podcasts now. Like, that's not going to go away. That's not going to stop. And in a lot of ways,
But you've mentioned, yeah. Just you've mentioned the missing class aspect of Latour's analysis.
Yes.
But the car mechanic remark is a bit classist in itself. To be honest. And
sorry. I got mixed up here. What did you just say?
I mean, you've mentioned the lack of the class aspect of Latour's analysis, but you have to admit that the car mechanic argument is pretty classist in itself. Like the working class is following, is following up. So we have to, change something again. And I mean,
right.
If I were to do a détournement, this Debordian thing with that most famous Latour's book title, yeah, maybe we were modern for some time, but we, in my opinion, and I guess that's a point that I through modernism. So we've jumped very suddenly into this postmodernist narratives and deconstruction of science and so on, without really thinking about the material conditions. We just.
I think we're back now.
Okay, when was the point I got cut?
Because it's been so sluggish this whole time. But hopefully here, this will be the last time, and then we'll be back. Because what I would like to do is let Matan ask his question before he might be forced to go back to work.
Okay. We can go back to this postmodernist stuff, whenever you like.
Sure. So let me just say, I think OBS is back. Sorry, everybody, that happened. If you're in the chat and you're hearing this now, use the thumbs up emoji to let me know that we're back. And once we have seen some thumbs in chat, we'll bring Matan on to ask the question. And I hope that this will all work. It's freaking me out. I don't like losing Wi-Fi in the middle of a stream. It's not good. By the way, while we're making let's make conversation just for a moment. I'm in Bucarias, Mexico. Been here for 2 days now. I was in Aguascalientes for the last few months, which is central Mexico, but this is like southern Mexico, and the ocean is like 10 minutes walk from here. And the water right now is warm, like slightly on the cool side, but basically warm. Like you just walk in and the waves are kind of coming in choppy and you know, pretty big. Like it's a good time.
Dave, but you know, the whole time you're in Mexico, you never arrived to answer me the question, what's your time zone actually?
Oh, my time zone. I never answered your question. It's funny. My time zone is the same as it was in Boise.
Great.
Yeah. Except that for until daylight savings, my time zone was the same as Mikey's time zone, which is central United States time. So so at first I was the same time zone as Mikey, and then when everybody set their clocks forward or backwards, whichever it was, forward. It was for everyone set their clocks forward. The time zone did not change in Mexico, so all of a sudden I went back to Boise time, which is mountain time. So
yeah, back in the future.
This is why you always say fucking bourgeois time zones.
It's not fucking, it's fucking.
Fucking. I can't tell the difference here, I think. Say again?
It's more British or Scottish.
Oh, I see. Fucking. Like that? Fucking.
Yeah, like, you know, pure working class accent.
Fucking bourgeois time zones. Yeah. Well, time zones have been a real issue. I guess we just need to all live in space on a flat planet, and then we'll be perfect. We'll be set. Yeah, time zones.
I mean, like,
that's the whole. How do these people live in online communities? These flat earthers, how do they live in online communities where they're all in different time zones, and then they're all like, no, like, do they account for time zones? I need to know.
Yeah, I guess they have some, you know, explanation for that.
It's like
I
it's like, hey, bro, it's the middle of the night here, and the other person's like, no, it's afternoon. Huh? Weird. Anyway, let's keep talking about flat Earth. But let's
it's like pure like Bauman would you know, that Polish sociologist would describe that liquid postmodernity, you know, everywhere it's like everywhere is a different time zone and the same at the same time, like whatever. Everything solid melts in the air, like in the Communist Manifesto.
Exactamente. All right, everybody. So I got a lot of thumbs up in the chat, and thank you, Darian, Matan, Songs 4K, Nance. It's good to see you're all engaged right now. Sid Ninda's also here, Songs 4K. This is good. We got a good chat going. So, Matan, are you able to pop in for a minute here and just ask your question yourself so I don't have to read it? I always can.
Yeah.
Perfect.
No, I'm good. Hello, Michael. May I call you Michael?
Yeah,
well, it doesn't matter.
Michael.
We're probably okay. Yeah. Let me just get straight to it. So you mentioned in a passing comment right in the beginning that there was this like mythical or folkloric element to these conspiracies in Poland in particular. I hope I'm not just like making that up. Did you say that?
I mean, you could stratify that. You know, there are simple, like to begin with, plain real political conspiracy theories.
Mm-hmm.
And at some level, you end up with Satanists and I don't know, Atlantis, some mystical shit like that. You know,
that piqued my interest because there was this like viral kind of moment which kind of broke that barrier between the two. I don't know if you know about this, but I think it was like a couple months ago. The president of Mexico, AMLO, he tweeted some picture of like a wood claiming that there was like a woodland spirit or something, like some mischievous woodland spirit, and he seemed serious. And I thought that kind of created an interesting juxtaposition to the kind of sort of conspiratorial, quote unquote, fetishist disavowal, which Zupancic talks about in her essay. Do you know what I mean? And I was wondering how you can account for the difference between the two. Does it have to do with like the political situation of the country, maybe? Because it seems like even with QAnon, they don't get as like a folkloric or mystical. You know what I mean? They like embedded in some sort of more realistic sounding like biopolitical arguments and things like that.
When I encounter those conspiracy theories that include, to put it shortly, metaphysical themes, otherworldly themes, what they do is they actually give you some serious cognitive mapping, like what's good, what's wrong, like that there's this perpetual ongoing war between the forces of evil and the forces of good, and I think that's the that's the main function it serves, like both epistemically and also when it comes to creating your identity. But when it comes to like fetishism, disavowal, and so on,
I'll just reference one moment, just Zupancic, if you recall, she mentions the Hopi and the Katsinas masks, and she mentions that as like a successful case of disavowal as compared to what we have now, where it's almost like you say the truth in order to assert the fact that you know conclusively,
I mean, I've never actually thought about that in the context of precise, concrete examples of conspiracy theories. And I'm trying to get back to like the roots of the fetishist disavowal theory. It's kind of strange. I guess it's on a different level because when you have those let's say simple like introductory level conspiracy theories, and you're trying to like superimpose I don't know, World Economic Forum conspiracy with Klaus Schwab or some Freemasonry and their lodges and so on, for all those class struggle and everyday conflicts that you endure. That for me looks like fetishist disavowal, because you're taking a part of it, a superficial, like your imaginary picture, and you're explaining the whole social structure and you're covering but when
oh no
when you're
Shit.
having connection or what?
Yeah, the internet dropped for just a second there, but I think we're back. I don't think it dropped OBS, so I think we're just
to put it even in a shorter way, we could even ask a question: do religious beliefs, which will just put all political, geopolitical, and so on events into one box of explaining it like I said, as a conflict between the forces of good and evil, and things like that, does it really count as fetishistic disavowal? Like, I don't know.
I view fetishistic disavowal as accomplishing the same thing, but what is fetishized is the act of like almost saying something that is true. Like the disavowal itself, the form of disavowal is what is fetishized rather than, this kind of like external object. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that would actually make sense, because you're not actually trying to explain those things, get into them, like approach this this otherness, both in Lacanian and Levinasian meaning of the word, but you're just producing those disavowals to like solidify your subjective position in the discourse. So you don't have to worry about, you know, any kind of subjective destitution or anything like that. So yeah, if that's the way, if I understand it well, I guess we agree on that.
Oh yeah, no, I didn't mean to disagree with you on anything. My question was rather, just, I mean, there almost seemed to be kind of like a, I don't know, it's almost like the boundary between like well, actually, I guess you did touch upon it with the whole, yeah, never mind, I think you got it, yeah. You know, there's a lot to think about.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
with the whole topic of as we've already mentioned, with the whole topic of this talk.
So let me see if I remember correctly. The Hopi mask example is where there's the children believe that there's like these actual monsters that are like possessed by spirits, but really it's their uncles for the most part. It's like their uncles, and there's a point when they get to learn, oh, that's not real, but then the kind of belief moves into, no, it's not like that the people wearing the masks, it's not that it's spirits wearing the masks, but the uncles themselves start to believe that they are kind of manifesting these spirits. Is that what it was? I don't. For me, this is all very. It's hard for me to tie this into what we're talking about.
You put it perfectly, and I'd just like to relate that actually to we were talking about Descartes and for they know not what they do. The trauma of like of the unmasking and seeing that it's your fathers, your uncles, whatever. It puts you in like this traumatic position of subjective destitution, which, you know, in a supposedly like positive, or not even supposedly, within the Hopi society, they kind of positively use that to reinforce their beliefs, but in a mystical sense, almost reinforcing those beliefs from scientific knowledge by placing the newfound belief in invisible spirits that inhabit the masks themselves, rather than them taking shape and like dancing in front of you and things like that. And with fetishist disavowal, there's no real belief after that. There's just a kind of an assertion, like a rush to assert the big other, as if it's real, non-castrated. But this doesn't like, and I mentioned this before, this doesn't allow for continued like social reproduction. It more than anything like leaves the subject in a state of like a, Jameson was just talking about, or I just read something by Jameson, in a state of ennui. Like not even, well, yeah, okay. So the Hopi in that case, it would be like the disavowal there. It established a big other, in the sense that Descartes does through his ontological, you know, proof of God. Yeah.
Well, this is thought provoking. I think it raises more questions than we have the space of time to really get into.
But when it comes to disavowal and taking internalizing this whole conspiratorial perspective, actually Zupančič proposes here a nice metaphor, and I would even say an interesting kind of dialectics, which for me sound like some, you know, twist on the master-slave dialectics. Because when we look from, you know, Lacanian perspective on the, how should I say, how do conspiracy theories followers perceive society? It is actually like a canyon, like a chasm, which is filled with like a herd of sheep, you know, that are mindlessly following this propaganda, this indoctrination and ideology. That's what city followers think. And on the top of this canyon, on one side, you have those in the know, you know, those that are conspiring And what they have is power and knowledge of what they're organizing, how they're trying to force people to do some things and to rule. And to some point, conspiracy theorists are on the same level, not on the level of power, but on the level of knowledge. And that's what I think is also a source of pleasure or even jouissance for them. Maybe we're not as powerful, but we know what's going on, and the rest of society, they're just too stupid,
Yeah, of course. There's a deceitful big other, but nevertheless, there is a big other.
So I'm creating this deceitful. That's exactly how Zupancic puts it. This deceitful, this malevolent big other, just to subjectify myself by mediating through it. I'm creating this, this scapegoat or this. I forgot the word. The strawman, maybe of some, masonry, pedophile politicians and so on, just to impose this position of being a subject supposed to know. Now I'm the one constructing the symbolic order all around. I don't know if that makes sense, actually.
No, I totally get that. I see that as like a regression from the Cartesian big other, because there is this same exact moment where there's a possibly deceitful big other, the whole Cartesian methodic doubt. But rather than, use that to try to prove some kind of like a positive big other, benevolent, which allows us to kind of maintain scientific knowledge, they rather stay in that position in order to kind of just remain in that state of enjoyment while ignoring the fact that they are actually correct in a sense.
And the problem with scientists getting on the phenomenon of conspiracy theories is that they do not search for this benevolent, this positive big other in conspiracy theories. That would actually legitimize and empower this cognitive position and perspective of city followers. Because, maybe they find themselves as being oppressed and so on, but at the same time, they're also at the same cognitive level as all those people in power, all those people in that are conspiring and so on. I don't know if I've made myself clear enough.
No, I totally get it. Yeah.
It feels like I don't like the term CT followers in a sort of sense, because though it's true that there are people who they listen to late night AM radio and they are religious followers of Alex Jones, and all of their tweets would be conspiratorial in essence, and they probably actually they actually believe in like a singular, unified, holistic, conspiratorial big other that is a cabal of bankers, globalists, potentially Jews, whatever. Though there are such people, I think there's a lot more people, like the overwhelming majority of working class people who have some pet conspiracy theory that they don't follow per se. They just kind of think, well, that's more likely than the given narrative. And I think that's kind of, there's the idea of a CT follower is that this person, they believe it. And the thing is usually there's a little bit more disavowal in the believer. Like it's not that they believe, it's that they don't believe in the mainstream narrative, and then they're open to alternatives, and they'll say, well, this is a cool theory. Well, this is a cool theory. Well, have you heard about this one? Have you heard about this one? And it's kind of like that. They're just super open-minded to anything that's not the mainstream narrative. And that, I think, is the essence of what is usually going on for... I've thought a lot about this because I think about it from an epistemological standpoint. Like, epistemologically, what is their way of qualifying a knowledge claim? And the answer is they don't. They just distrust the mainstream narrative and have an open mind towards basically everything and anything else. You'll notice that there's rarely have I ever experienced like an argument between conspiracy theorists, right? It's not that they're just, it's more like they're in the, it's like they're in the lab of ideas. Like they're just like, oh, well, what about this? And what about that? It could be this, it could be that. And I think that kind of spirit, I think maybe it's different with these fully convinced QAnon people that I've met, where it's just like, nope, Hillary, she's this pedophile bitch, she's a Satan worshiper. I've met people like that. But then you also meet people who are like, it's just all ideas, man. I'm open to whatever because I'm just trying to figure it out. And I take it all with a grain of salt, which is actually also the attitude that we see with a lot of people who follow mainstream media. People who follow mainstream media, they don't believe everything they hear on mainstream media. They take it all with a grain of salt, but they kind of, for the most part, they're open to the mainstream media that they follow, its general narrative for any event. And so this brings me to my thesis, which is just that I believe that we live in a post-trust age. I don't think that there is any going back. I don't know what it would require for the ruling class to win back trust, except for to move towards some kind of a post-class society. And that as long as we get called the bad people responsible for all bad things who need to be censored for being skeptical, it's only going to make the situation worse, right? Like because if you go, well, what about building number 7 with 9/11? What about building number 7? And then everybody just goes, what are you talking about? And you go, well, it wasn't just the 2 buildings that fell. Building number 7, like it collapsed demolition style, blocks away from the Twin Towers. And there's no reason. And then, it was on fire. Well, if it was on fire, it wouldn't have collapsed demolition style. What are we talking about? And then people are like, oh, it doesn't matter. And then they want to change the subject. And it's like, I'm not saying George Bush engineered 9/11. I'm not saying the 9/11 engineered 9/11. I'm not saying that that it wasn't the group of hijackers that the media was telling us that it was. But it's interesting, isn't it, that there's this building number 7 that fell demolition style within, I think, like a day's time of the other buildings, and then it just wasn't talked about, right? And then it's like, well, those people who were marching in Washington, those people who were marching the truth movement, they were just conspiracy theorists. They're insulting the memory of all of those people, those first responders and the victims of 9/11. They're insulting all of them, and it's like, I feel like that's not, that kind of response, that just, oh, well, you're insulting the memory of these people. It kind of evades the real questions or the real concern there. And I bring up this example specifically because I think as far as my friends in philosophy go, the 9/11 narrative, something being off about it, is probably the most popular for anybody who's really looked into it. Like when it comes to all of these other conspiracies, I don't have any friends that take any of the rest of them that seriously, but I've got at least 3 that I can think of off the top of my head that are like, nope, there's something else going on with that 9/11 narrative. And so I think that the media's response to the truther movement in the aftermath of 9/11 is itself mostly to blame for the rise in conspiracy theories, because you feel gaslit if you ask questions and then people just call you names. And I think that is and it makes you think, well, maybe there really is something going on here, because why would they respond in this way? Right.
And that's the problem. Like, I think that you've raised 2 of the points here that I wanted to make today. First of all is that, when I'm trying to understand conspiracy theories, I'm asking myself, what function do they fulfill for people? What interest do they have into coming into that narrative, that discourse? And when you look at mainstream media, mainstream political discourse, first of all, it shows no significant antagonisms, social antagonisms. They are just silenced. They're,
right.
Wrapped off the screen. But that's something you experience every day. So that's one reason to search for something alternative. Second thing, more general, we are searching, as subjects in the symbolic field for something to be mediated through truth, for something to be mediated through, so that we can, produce our subjectivity. And as in, political economy, you need some resources to produce anything, even your own identity. So we're going to grab all those things that are close to you, that are relatable, that are, in open access, which is not the case when it comes to like majority of scientific discourse. And I'm not talking like about paywalls. I'm just talking about the wall of jargon and the education gap, And the second thing is that, you said that, in your opinion, most of the people that are getting in touch with conspiracy theories are not like hardcore followers. They're just entertaining those ideas. And I guess looking at some preliminary studies that we have here in Poland, that's basically it's confirmed. People barely like at any point say that they're like 100% following something. They're more like, yeah, I take it with more or less grain of salt, but I'm taking that into consideration. I'm feeling distressed. Something is not right. Some counter narratives are silenced. So I have at least this, minimal reason for following that. Yeah, that's exactly what Matan wrote in our chat here on Zoom. I know very well, but nevertheless, the fetish is disavowal, But, materially speaking, as far as you look at cognitive tools that those people have, I mean, it's pretty justified, and that's actually shame for like media and scientific discourse. Like we failed with including, with the inclusion of those people into the civil society. And I don't want to sound like a liberal in that classical meaning, but yeah, we kind of failed. And that's these are the internal contradictions of and this feeling of being above conspiracy theories. And the conspiracy theories themselves are, for me, two sides of one coin.
Excellent.
I think we could move forward to the Q&A part.
That's what I was just thinking. And so what I wanted to say to the chat is, if you're there and you want to hop in, I know Swole probably has to go back to work, but I know Swole also is very sympathetic of the truthers. I think that he's very against the current narrative about the 9/11 stuff. So I'd actually love if Swole's able to pop in on the chat here. I did send it to you there on Theory Underground. Eamon. Anybody else who got the link on Theory Underground, you're able to hop in here if you want to. I know Philip's been here, I think, in the background for a long time, so he's probably got questions or something to add to the conversation. I know I'll want to raise something back about post-authorized, autonomous, all of this, everything. I want you to be able to kind of explain what that is and what your disagreement with Chris Catrone is, since you're kind of appearing on this platform in the same stretch of the marathon phase. And so I do want you to at least touch on that, because we all disagree with Catrone in our own special ways, and figuring out what those contradictions are over the next 10 years will be the sort of flowering or maturing of our own intellectual projects. And that's why he, as an educator, is so productive, is because he makes that possible. But anyway, Philip, how's it going, man?
Excellent. Loving the talk. Is it cool to shoot some questions?
Yeah, man.
Let's go.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what your take on religion being a conspiracy theory is. I know Dave talked to Todd McGowan over the ultra marathon, and there was some talk about like, do the people who believe in eternity have the right to encroach on someone that's like, nah, not about it? And then I was just wondering if you think there is anything outside of the structure of what Nietzsche brought up in the genealogy of morals, where he says we're continuing to fight in the form of Rome versus Judea. So that's kind of what it feels like, you know, Rome, the official narrative, the mainstream, whatever you want to call it. And then Judea, kind of the one by people who can't find so much worldly power. They don't know how to oppose it. And so they, like you said, like get jouissance out of the subversion. And then my third one, this is the last question, is like, do you have an idea or do you have a personal technique of how to deal with people that come to you with, you know, conspiracy theories? Do you listen to them? Do you hear them out and just go, yeah, well, agree to disagree? Do you have a category of like more or less harmful conspiracy theories?
Okay, so I'll try to address that, you know, pretty neatly and quickly. Because to be honest, I'm a bit short on not just on time, but on energy, on time energy, as they would say. So first of all, I do not consider any religion being inherently conspiracy theory, but as a set of ideas, of signifiers, it may be very resourceful for conspiracy theories. You can find many like narratives, you know, pictures, some building blocks to construct your conspiracy theory. That's first thing. Because, you know, as I said, I'm more for the more structural than content-oriented way of defining conspiracy theories. And being religious by itself is not a way of being and perceiving and understanding that is in any way entangled with conspiratorial thinking. That's my take on it. When it comes to that Nietzsche point, I agree with that. I'm not big into that precise, you know, part of Nietzsche's theory, but it sounds like a good metaphor for what's happening, for why are conspiratory narratives raising right now. And the last question, how do I deal? Do I have any pro tips and things like that? I do not, actually. Like, I do not have many people that are, you know, thinking in a conspiratorial way around me. If they are entertaining those thoughts, it's like Dave said. They see something is not really all right with the official discourse, so they, you know, getting a bit of taste of those city narratives. And I have also, you know, this problem that I'm very sympathetic towards conspiratorial thinking, because, as I said, they have some similar points with us philosophers in the skepticism and so on. So I always believe, maybe naively and idealistically, that there is a grain of class consciousness in that. So that's my personal approach. I hope it satisfies you. the answer.
No, that's very good. Maybe a different way would be like, do you have, when you're taking in information, like a little tab that you're like, I'm going to toss that as conspiracy, and this is not, or do you kind of approach everything with a bit of, like you said, self-criticality?
You know, when I'm getting all those information, and when I'm reading, you know, Twitter, when I'm watching news, whatever, first thing that I'm taking into account is like, why was this information even produced? And, you know, that's puts me in the calm mode. You know, a bit in when you understand things like that, you're a bit in control of, you know, the flow of information. And with a grain of empathy, you can like process maybe even some of the more hardcore conspiratorial theories, you know, out there, as well as you can process, you know, right-wing or liberal centrist bullshit on mainstream media.
Awesome. Thank you. Really, really enjoyed the talk. It's great.
Thank you for those questions, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Philip.
Yeah, where's Dave?
Thank you, Philip. Oh, I turned off my camera there because I didn't want it to mess up the view on OBS, but then I just realized I can just turn off the self view, and then you can all still see me, but the chat, the live side can't. I just wanted them to see you and Philip. So I think we have a time here for a couple more. And so Nance or Adam or Matan or Philip, if you got anything more and you want to, I want to make sure that you have your opportunity here. It's not been a long tradition here, this idea of the audience Q&A, because the platform used to be such that I was pretty much, it was just Theory Plebe. Theory Plebe does whatever, maybe has a guest sometimes. But the new model here is that it's Theory Underground, that there's fellow travelers. Those fellow travelers are able to pop in and engage sometimes, you know. And part of the reason was because I kept meeting people who stayed around after I kind of filtered out all the influencer follower types from this channel. And the people who were remaining were awesome. I was like, shit, I've got a really cool crew here. So, you know, I like this discussion component, and I think that the marathon stream really speaks to the potential here. But I guess I do want to give you your opportunity here, Michał, to say your bit about what is post-authorized autonomous Marxism, and what was it that Catrone said about it? What did he say? He said it was stupid or something. What did he say?
I don't really remember. I only remember his attitude of disdain towards it. That it was like some kind of weird Italian experiment, some kind of reformism.
Yeah. Okay.
Or maybe anarchism, which, you know, in my opinion, is more of a compliment.
Okay, so that's actually funny because most of the people, I always get this idea that most of the people still around aren't anarchists, like with my channel, aren't anarchists, because I think I've been dismissive to anarchists as well. But and I've tended to have more Marxists around. But I'm also so critical of Marxists that I know that there are anarchists around. And then I think that most anarchists are also critical of a lot of anarchist tendencies. And so you can't be a real anarchist without being critical of the ways that there's been a sort of institutional capture of anarchism and a way of mirroring that in movement spaces, specifically and mostly in the United States. And so I guess this is a more nuanced sauce than I've put on the idea of anarchism in like 3 years. And so I really want to give you your moment here to kind of explain why you're sympathetic to why you're sympathetic to anarchism, and how post-authorized Marxism is related to that.
You know, Dave, first of all, we can, you know, make one day, if you would like, make a separate stream about that, you know, about all those autonomous tendencies. But to put it shortly, and here I'm following Harry Cleaver, who actually coined the term autonomous Marxism. And this is an umbrella term. And the three main examples of autonomous Marxist tendencies are, you know, first and foremost, operaismo in Italy, or operaism in more English way. this is the kind of Marxism that was created firstly by Raniero Panzeri and Mario Tronti in 60s in Italy. And it was just a theoretical counterpart of all the strikes, of all the class struggle that took place in Italy. It was a very specific context because you had an officially or nominally communist party that was actually doing some nice dealing with both church and capital. And it also petrified the union movement, So workers have to gain their own, and here comes the most important word, autonomy. So they started to perceive themselves as, a directly political subject in the class conflict that doesn't have to be represented neither by party nor even by a labor union. And with that comes also, different shades of, reading of Marx, the whole idea that working class is a part of capital, like from inside, so it has to, which is similar to this, subjective destitution. We have to destroy our position as working class, actually. We have to negate our position inside the system. And, in that vein of autonomous Marxism, there are some important feminist influences and so on. Like we have Johnson Forrest tendency in 40s and 50s in States, which was a kind of post-Trotskyism that was very like workers oriented. It didn't care a lot about like official party representation and so on. Those researchers just like followed direct actions like wildcat strikes and so on. And there is also this socialisme barbarie, socialism or barbarism movement in France that was also very influential in its methods for Italian operaism. Like in 60s, Europe was, a great, as you all agree, I hope, a great lab of ideas and social movements, also anarchist ones. Like if you want to get into, like right now, I don't feel like comfy enough, and we do not have, enough time to get into that. But if you want to get into that by yourself, the best book I can recommend is Harry Cleaver's Reading Capital Politically. Like before he gets into reading literally Marx Capital, the first chapter, like for about 100 pages, he describes the history of Marxism through this autonomous perspective, like criticizing these, this conservative moments in Marxism, those anti-workers actually moments in Marxism, and how we can, learn through those mistakes and get into more, politically effective position. And, especially through in the moment when operaismo evolved into post-operaismo. So what had happened, it got into academia, it got into sociology and media studies, whatever. We have theories like cognitive capitalism, some interesting theories on the basic income and so on. So there's a lot of, it's like, whole different universe. That's all
Perfect.
I can tell. And
no. I don't want you to have to feel like the need to do this whole to really unpack it all. But I would just say you give like a good sort of you kind of had given a sort of lay of the land, and I would just add it really is against this sort of fetishization of the party, of the union, of the big group with a bureaucratic representative class or a PMC. And
it's anti-avant-garde.
It's very anti-avant-garde, and obviously, so this is why Catron has an issue with it, because he's a very big-time Leninist. But also, I think that there's a sort of synergy here that I would get along better with some autonomists than other tendencies because they are. I think that I would find a lot of people sympathetic to time energy theory there, right? Who would be like, yeah, no, the point is not worker representation for the sake of redistribution alone. The point is beyond representation and redistribution. It's about being able to have a life and direct your labor power yourself, which I would say is reclaiming time energy, because time energy outside of labor power is the point, right? So yeah, I think that there's a lot there.
It's to put it in the shortest way, there's a, my favorite term in the Italian dictionary of autonomism, autovalorizzazione, which we translate usually as autonomous reproduction of working class. We want to reproduce ourselves as human, as culture, as living organism on our own terms, and basically that's all.
Cool. And then
we can. I don't want to be rude and force a abrupt ending of the stream, but maybe like one more question, and I'm like, I gotta get a nap.
Yeah,
at least.
That's what I was gonna say. Is I was actually thinking, unless there's a question, I was gonna say I think that this is probably the time for you to close out, to kind of take any threads that have been left that you might want to tie
Dave,
back together.
I've lost sound. I've lost your sound.
Philip, can you hear me? Philip can hear me, but you can't hear me.
Now it works.
Yeah, I still got you.
Okay.
Yeah, I've lost internet connection for a while.
Okay, welcome back. So I was just saying that I agree, and that I think that unless there was a final question, I think that this is the perfect time to kind of tie everything back together. And so the one thing that allowing you to basically say your closing remarks, the one thing I wanted to say was that in the chat there were a couple great comments from Adam Nearing and Songs 4K. I'm just going to read them and then let you do your closing comments. And so Adam Nearing had said, should the definition of conspiracy theories contain the psychological aspect of this phenomena, or is it perceived as not methodologically correct? Okay, would it be not methodologically correct to include the psychological aspect?
Let me answer that quickly. Yes and no, because we have to include the psychological, cognitive perspective, but there's also a danger in here of like individualizing in the liberal, in the way of liberal methodology of approaching society. Like, we do not want to individualize all social phenomenon because they are social. So when I'm looking for any features through which I want to define either conspiracy theories as narratives or as way of thinking, it's always mediated through the social context. Let's stay dialectical in here, okay?
That's perfect. And then Songs 4K asked, or actually said, Hofstadter defines the classic model of conspiracy theory in the paranoid style, using Birchers as his example. Endless documentation and footnotes take huge leaps to a preordained conclusion. Yeah, I just thought that was a really cool definition, and you're nodding your head like you're familiar with it. Is there anything you would like to add to that?
Yeah, I've read Hofstadter, but if you want to go any further with that, I'll be just as laconic and quick as possible in here. Read Jodi Dean's Aliens in the USA. Like, she had some hot takes on that paranoid style of American politics theory.
Perfect. And that's
because
pretty much...
Hofstadter, he's pretty decent, but he still, has those idealistic approach typical for political theory. But you cannot talk about history of theorizing about conspiracy theories without him. So, you know how it is.
Perfect. Cool. Well, with that, I guess I just want to thank you so much for coming on. And this has been a long time coming. We've been trying to make it work for way too long, and so I'm glad we finally got to do it. I hope.
Yeah,
that we
I'm
can
so
do it
happy.
again.
Not gonna lie. Like, we've been thinking about streaming anything together for a long time, and I hope it's not the last one. Like, we could take, some more purely philosophical topics, or maybe
Absolutely.
something about autonomous Marxism.
That'd be great. And I definitely want to bring you back for a talk about media. But I guess for now, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. This has been Dave, Michael, and Philip now. And so with that, I'm going to roll the PSA that I'm hoping, it's the memo that I hope everybody gets here in the next month. Bye. Hold on, folks. I just realized why we are breaking something. Hold on one second. The place, I'm supposed to be playing a file here that is not playing, and the reason it's not playing is because the drive was not plugged in. So now I've plugged it in, and it should start here in a second. Let's see if I can get it to start by doing this. 3, 2, 1. Roll the PSA. Why is it not working? Hold on. Let's see if I just do this. Play, bitch. It's what?
It's the government.
The government knows. That's what's happening. Okay. I'm gonna do this the old-fashioned way. Delete, drop it back in. At least one person's like, "What PSA?" Well, here you go, everybody. Enjoy. Bye-bye.
And now a quick message from our sponsors. Just kidding. This will be neither quick nor from any corporate or state sponsorship. What follows is a description of Theory Underground, a thank you to its patrons, information about the upcoming tour, and 3 brand new courses that you might want to enroll in. Stay for the whole thing to get promo codes to save on those courses or information about the financial aid scholarship.
Theory Underground is a philosophy lecture course gated social media site and publishing house by and for working class intellectuals and renegade academics. The subject matters dealt with at Theory Underground are the most important, yet neglected for understanding ourselves, the world, and ways of possibly changing it.
Because we have no corporate or state sponsors, only a small band of patrons, everything in this first year of operation helps immensely. Special thank yous to Bert, Nance, Marilyn, Carl, and Adam for your help in the $50 per month patron tier. If you want to help but the $50 tier is too much, consider donating towards meals and gasoline via Venmo or PayPal.
The gasoline is for our countrywide tour of the U.S., where we aim to meet with supporters of this effort and do events to draw in new people who do not necessarily belong to marketing demographics predetermined by the attention economy. We will be giving lectures, leading discussions, and promoting several brand new books. Our goal is to only go to towns and cities where we have personal invitations from at least one person. We are doing this underground style, which for the hardcore punk scene in the US meant coming for long enough to get to know the area and do multiple events, not this modern treadmill of a new city each night in an attempt to maximize fame and profit. If you are interested in being a host, guide, or volunteer, then please fill out the form at https://theory-underground.com/US-tour-2023. In an attempt to utilize the resources made publicly available, we will be using libraries for most of our events. So if you have a local library card and can reserve a space for us, we would most appreciate it. Alternatively, some of you might have access to pretty epic venue spaces. Just let us know ahead of time.
Now for the courses. The 3 upcoming courses are What is Sex?, Digital Literacy and CMT, Critical Media Theory, and Being and Time. All courses at Theory Underground are available after the fact on demand, but some people get a lot more out of doing it live with a cohort.
If you are looking to think deeply about the devices we have become reliant on while experimenting with new ways of reclaiming your attention span and relationship with yourself and others, then check out Digital Literacy and Critical Media Theory, a course that is structured to combat the attention economy while strategically using some of its tools to help us gain a freer relationship to our devices. If interested, an introduction to this course will be shared at the end of this video. Just make sure to click on it. The lectures for this course take place on the second Sunday of every month for 6 months, starting in May. If you sign up at Tier 3, you also get access to the recovery group component, which also meets once per month. Enroll with promo code CMTEarlyBirdYT before May 13th for 20% off.
If you are frustrated by the discourse revolving around gender ideology, left and right, then join us in thinking deeper about sex. Cadell Last of Philosophy Portal is joining up with Theory Underground to teach Alenka Zupančic's What is Sex?, one of the most succinct and cutting-edge works of theory dealing with the topic. Zupančič is one of the Slovenian circle's most incisive critics of both naive progressivism and reactionary tendencies when it comes to thinking about the relationship between sex, culture, and subjectivity. If interested, watch 3 Reasons to Read What is Sex?, which will be shared on screen at the end of this video. What is Sex begins in May and goes through June, meeting for 4 lecture sessions, and, surprise, you will actually get to meet Alenka Zupančič herself. Use promo code WHATISSEXEarlyBirdYT before May 7th for 20% off.
And just so you know, everybody, don't stress the capitalization. I just make it that way so it's more readable. It's not case sensitive. Being in Time is one of the most notorious, profound, and difficult works of philosophy from the last 200 years. Its deconstruction of modernity and fundamental challenge to scientism is a prerequisite rite of passage for any thinker who wants to seriously engage with continental philosophy, social theory, or world change. In this course, you will learn about what Heidegger means by being in the world, Dasein, being unto death, and so many other crucial developments. But more important than all these buzzwords is just taking on this work itself and wrestling with the text. Doing so will rapidly accelerate your reading comprehension abilities and simultaneously challenge some of your most deep-seated presuppositions. As before, an introductory video to this course is shared on the end screen of this video, or can be accessed from the links in the description. Being in Time Division 1 starts in June and ends July 22nd. Division 2 begins August 19th and goes through October. To sign up for Division 1 today, use the promo code BEINGINTIME before the end of May for 20% off.
If you feel obstructed by the cost of these courses, then we have good news. But before getting into the financial aid info, why are there even price tags at all, much less tiered pricing? First, because some people just want to audit, whereas others want constructive critical feedback or even one-on-one sessions. The tiers exist so that you can get the value you are seeking while compensating me, Dave, fairly for the time and energy required.
Second, the prices set for these courses aim to make Theory Underground sustainable, meaning that it will bring in enough to pay for the costs of the operation, including my personal bills, since I want to be a co-earner in the household when my soon-to-be wife and I start a family.
Thirdly, people tend to take the things they pay for more seriously, and we want you to get the most out of this experience.
With those reasons aside, we do not seek to exclude anyone who is struggling just to get by. We have a financial aid scholarship option for people who are currently between jobs or who live in a country on a cheap currency, like many of you who watch from Thailand, India, Mexico, or Poland, to name a few of the residents of some of the people who have already received financial aid scholarships in the last couple of months. Because I know what trying to study theory under the stresses of housing insecurity and poverty is like, the scholarship was set up during the first month of operation. Simply fill it out at https://theory-underground.com/scholarship.
Last but not least, stay tuned for the Theory Underground app, coming soon to an app store near you on your phone.
Yeah, and seriously, thank you for listening or watching to this point, and yeah,
Thanks.
we look forward to taking these courses with you.
Bye.